Hi guys, in this video I'm going to introduce you to Microsoft Excel. This video is for complete beginners who've never used Microsoft Excel before, or people who have used it but are not too proficient at it. So we're going to get you up to speed. And I want to let you know, if you want to be an expert at Microsoft Excel and you want to know everything from the basics all the way to the advanced, go to excelvbasequel.com. You can watch over 20 hours of free videos on everything about Excel that you can imagine, all the formulas up to writing macros and programming things so you don't have to do anything in Excel. It'll do it for you. So go to excelvbasequel.com, watch all the videos. You'll be an expert at Excel. Put your email in here on the website and we'll send you an email when free videos go up so you can be notified and contact us here. Okay, so let's get started. First thing, what is Microsoft Excel? Well, it's an application from Microsoft, and it allows you to store data, and you could do a million different things with data. That's why Microsoft Excel is so popular and it's so desired by employers, because you can do tons and tons of stuff, amazing stuff with Excel. So, how do you get to Excel? Well, I'll show you a couple ways. First way is you go to the Start button in your lower left-hand corner. You click on Start, and you can see here in this list, because I use Microsoft Excel, um, it has Microsoft Excel already listed here. So you could just click on this, and if you click on it, it opens up Microsoft Excel. So that's one way to get to Excel, to open it. You go to the Start button. It might be on your recent list if you've used it before. If you haven't used it before, which is quite possible, go to the Start button and go to All Programs. Click on All Programs and scroll down for Microsoft Office right here. Once you see this folder, click on it, and you should see all the Microsoft Office products like Excel, Access, Word, PowerPoint. You want to click on the Excel one. So here's where you can access all the Microsoft Office programs. So again, that was go to Start, go to All Programs, and go to Microsoft Office, the Microsoft Office folder, and then click on left click on Microsoft Excel 2010 or whatever version you have. So I'm using Microsoft Excel 2010. You might be using 2007. You can use Excel 2003. It doesn't matter. The 99% of the functionality that I'm going to go through in this video is going to be pretty much the same for all versions. And we'll talk about that in a second. So, okay. One other thing is, how do you find out what version you're running? What version of Microsoft Excel? Well, you can go here and click on Microsoft Excel. Let's go to the All Programs. We go to Microsoft Office folder, and if you right-click on the program, you'll get this little pop-up menu and go down to Properties, and when you do that, it'll say, okay, the title, it's Microsoft Excel 2010. If you had 2003 or 2007, it would show that. So now we know how to open up Excel. If it's on your recent used list, if it's not, then go to All Programs. And then one final way, there it is. And then one final way is if someone sent you an Excel file and an email or something, and you could download that email, put it on your desktop, and it'll look like this. There's an icon. All you have to do to access Excel then is left click, double click on it, and it'll open up. So this document is called Test here. Here's the title, and you could see when I double clicked, it opened it. Okay, so there's three main ways that you're going to open Microsoft Excel primarily. This way, if it's on your desktop, you just double click, and then the other two ways, which we already went over, either here or through the All Programs selection. Okay, so now that you know how to get to Microsoft Excel, and you know how to find out what version you're in, we can start talking about Microsoft Excel. Okay, so let's open up a workbook. So I'm going to go here, All Programs, Microsoft Office, double click, left click, double click it, left on the left click, double click. Okay, so here it is. Notice when it opened up like this, and it didn't go to the full screen. To make it go to the full screen, you could either double click right here on the left click, double click it, or so if I do that, I'll do that. And if I want to minimize it, I can double click this bar up top. So that's one way to expand and contract this window if it pops up. Another way is if you just click these maximize. You see I hover over and it says maximize. And if I hover over this one, it'll say minimize. And what that does is if I do maximize, it takes up the whole screen, which is what we want. Okay, so that's what these buttons up here do. They minimize or they maximize your screen. And then this one, or this maximize, if you hit it, it's just going to expand it and then make it smaller. This minimize actually shrinks it to your toolbar down here, or your task toolbar down here. So you now know how to change the size of, once you open Microsoft Excel, how to change the size of the application. So if you're wondering about that. And again, you could use these buttons, which are primarily what people use, but you can also just double click on the side of the toolbar. But use these, it might be easier because it'll tell you minimize or maximize. Okay, so now we opened Excel. Now we know how to minimize and maximize the window. So what are we looking at here? This looks very intimidating. There's like a million controls, cut, copy, format, lots of things it says, Calibri. What is all this stuff, right? Well, don't be intimidated. If you just watch the videos that we put up, you will see that this is very easy, actually. So let's talk about the interface before we get into this area, before we get into anything else, because the interface, when you open it up, it can be very, very intimidating. So let's talk about this blank part here. What is this? Well, this part here, and I'm just clicking my mouse, left clicking my mouse on this part. This part here is, and if I hold down the left part of the mouse and I drag my cursor, I can highlight it. This is called highlighting, and all I'm doing is holding down the left click and dragging my cursor, and that's called highlighting. So that's all I'm doing here. And what I want to show you is this part is called the spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet is where you're going to do all your work, pretty much. This is where you're going to put in data and make things, amazing projects. Now, how do you put in data? Well, we'll get to that in a little bit, but I'll give you a little sense. Is all you have to do is click on any cell, and these are called cells here, and just type something. So I'm going to type hi. So I clicked on a cell and I typed hi here. And now why is it called a cell? Well, you see that the spreadsheet is made up of columns that go from A all the way up to B, C, D, F, G, H, and that keeps going. It has a million columns, not a million, 16,000 columns, I'm sorry. So there's a ton of these columns, and they're all lettered. So it goes A, and if we keep moving over, it'll go really high to, after A, B, C, D, E, F, G up to Z, it starts with AA. And so if we go out here, you'll see at column Z, it then starts to AA and AB. And it just goes on, 16,000 columns like that are lettered, but every column has a unique letter starting with A over here. And it also has rows, and the rows are numbered from 1 all the way down to 1,000,000. So you have columns, which are these things, and you have rows, which are these things. And a cell is just the intersection of a column and a row. So this cell that contains high in it is the intersection of this column B and this row 2. And notice over here in this name box, if I hover over it, it says name box. It gives you the name of the cell that you're in. So if I click on a cell, it tells me its name. This is B3. And why is it called B3? Well, you're in column B and you're in row 3. And you could see Microsoft Excel highlights that. It's orange here and it's orange here. So it tells you you're in column B and you're in row 3. So that's what this spreadsheet is. It's just a bunch of columns going out from right to left and a bunch of rows going all the way down from the very top to a million rows down. Now, we'll leave it there for now because this is just an introduction to the spreadsheet. We're going to do a lot more with the spreadsheet, but let's talk about a couple other things on this interface. So up top here, when you open Microsoft Excel, you see at the very top it has Book 1. Now what is that? Well, that's just the title of your workbook. And this is called a workbook. I should have said that. That when you open up a Microsoft Excel application by clicking on that, you're opening up what's called a workbook. And this is the title of the workbook. So there's the title. In the upper right corner, we saw what we saw before, these minimize and maximize buttons here, where we can minimize the Excel application. Or if I click that, if I left click that, it expanded it, but I can also use the expand feature here of this maximize. And that's what these do. They just minimize and maximize stuff. And also, if you want to close the workbook, then you hit this close, this red X. So if I close this, then it pops up a box that says, do you want to save the changes that you made to the workbook? And that's because I'm about to close it. I'm about to get rid of it. It's saying, do you want to save it? So for right now, I'm just going to click Don't Save. And what does that mean? Well, because I click Don't Save, it just gets rid of that whole workbook. It just says, okay, there's no more workbook. And you don't have any workbook anymore. Now I just opened up another workbook. And if I click Close again, if I click close again, you'll see that it closed the workbook right away. So why didn't it do that the other time? It asked me if I wanted to save. Well, that's because I changed the workbook. So remember, I put like high in a cell. And because I wanted to close it, it says do you want to save the changes you made? The important thing to notice here is that it knows that you made changes. So Microsoft Excel is very smart. If you make a change to the workbook, which I did here by typing in high, then it knows that you made a change. And when you go to close it, it's going to ask you, do you want to save or not save? So the last time I said don't save and I got rid of it. Now this time I'm going to click save. And what pops up is this window that allows me to type in a file name. And notice the default file name is Book 1, which is the title. But I want to type in another file name. And I'm going to type in my workbook. And then I want to save it on my desktop like that. So I select desktop. And I'm going to save as type. I'm going to put Excel workbook, which it defaults to. And then I just click save. So now I save that workbook and it's right here. It's on my desktop. So now I can open that up. And notice when it's on your desktop, it has the name that I just typed in. I just typed in my workbook. So there it is. I double click on it. And now the title of the workbook is my workbook up top. And it says hi over here. Okay, so we know what the title is. We know what these three things do: minimize, maximize, close. But there's also these other minimize, maximize, close. Now what is this about? Well, if I hit this minimize function here, this minimize button here, what happens is that whole worksheet disappeared. So you have two sort of minimize, maximize buttons. One is for the main application of Microsoft Excel, and the other is for the worksheet. So where did the worksheet go? Well, it went down here, right there. So there's my worksheet. And if I click maximize, it comes back. So you see these minimize, maximize buttons. You can minimize the whole application by doing this, and it goes to your toolbar. If you click on it, it'll come back. Or you could just minimize the worksheet, and you could do it like that. Actually, you're not minimizing the worksheet. You're minimizing an instance of. You're minimizing the workbook. I'm sorry. So notice that up here it's no longer saying my workbook. It just says Microsoft Excel. So these minimize buttons are for Microsoft Excel, the application, whereas the minimize buttons you see here, down here, are for the workbook. Okay, because you might have multiple workbooks open. Okay, so we know what those things do. Now, what is this monstrous thing here? This gray thing with all these buttons and all these tabs here, insert, and they all have all kinds of crazy stuff on them. Well, this is called the ribbon, the Microsoft Excel ribbon. And the ribbon is it just has a bunch of commands on it, a bunch of buttons, a bunch of images that when you click them, you're able to do stuff. So for instance, if I put my cursor in the cell and I click this image of like a paint bucket, if I hover over it, it tells me what it is, what this command button is. And it says fill color there, and it says color the background of selected cells. So if you click that, it colors the background of the selected cell, which is the cell that I clicked on. And we'll get into all these things, but this is probably the most intimidating part of Microsoft Excel is what are all these tabs up here, and there's unique and different things on every tab, and it's like, well, how do you possibly know what everything does? And you don't need to know what everything does. You'll learn it as you watch videos or as you work, so don't be intimidated by this at all. This is just every tab is sort of broken up into groups, and they have things that you can do, like we just saw, color cells, and then much more sophisticated things, but easy things. They're not difficult. Okay, so we know what this thing is just a ribbon, and this thing has things that we can do, like color things and a whole bunch of other stuff. So what is this up here? In Microsoft 2010 Excel, there's this thing here. It's called a quick access toolbar, and all this thing does is allow you to, if you click on this, you're able to minimize the whole workbook again, or you can close it or things like that. You can also save it here, so if you click that, it'll save it. You could also undo things, because I click that button, now my cell is not yellow anymore, and this one will redo what you just undid. And this is like a quick access thing. So all this is saying is you can there's commonly used things, and by default here's what they are. So by default there's some things that are commonly used, and Microsoft Excel just says, okay, real quickly we'll put them up here so you can have them at your access. But you can add things to this. So if you use other functionality, you could put it up here. So it's quick access toolbar. That's what that is. Okay, so under the ribbon, now we have this FX thing. It says insert function. And what this is it allows you to write a function. What is a function? Well, there's going to be videos on it, but let's look at a simple function. Let's say that I have a number in this cell and a number in this cell. What this this white area, it's called the formula bar, and you could type a formula in here. Actually, it's not called a function bar, but it's called a formula bar. So I'm going to put equals. To start a formula, you need equals. And then a real simple formula is sum. So you could sum, and you could see it pops up a little help thing here. It says one number, and then comma, another number. So if I do this, this is a formula, very simple formula that sums up D2, cell D2, which is in column D, row 2, which is what we have here. Notice that the color of D2 matches with the highlighted color of this cell. So it's telling you where D2 is, right here, the blue one. And then D3 is the green one, which is here in column D, row 3. And now to enter a function, notice that when you're typing, or the formula, I'm sorry, when you're typing the formula, in this cell, which is what I have highlighted, it shows the formula. And if you press enter, now if I press enter, there's my result of my formula. Another way I could have done this, if I didn't want to link it to cells, is just do something like this. I could do, if I put my cursor in that cell, E4, I'll just do equals 1, and then plus sign, and then 1. And there's 2 there. So there's 2 formulas here. One is using numbers, and one is using what are called functions. And this is a function. It's called a sum function that just takes 2 numbers and sums them. But notice, this is the powerful thing about Microsoft Excel, is that you can reference cells in these functions. So this is a function right here, and this is a formula. So you use sometimes, a lot of times actually, you're going to be using functions in your formulas. Okay, so that's an introduction to this formula bar. It allows you to write formulas that either use numbers or they can use functions like this, a sum function. And there's hundreds of Excel functions. You could access them by going here and finding them. If you click on a blank cell and you go to function, there's tons of functions, and we'll put a video up on that. Okay, so that's the formula bar. This thing here we went over is a name box that just tells you what cell are you in. If I click on any cell, notice that up here it's changing from B1, column B, row 1. And now if I click on this cell, E8, it says E8. That's all this thing is doing. And what else? The status bar. So down here, what is this? Well, this thing that says ready, this is called the status bar. And if I put a number here, notice when I start typing something, so I'm typing, this thing changes to enter. It says in enter mode. So it's just telling you the status of things. If you're not entering anything, it's saying ready, meaning it's ready for you to enter data. And if you have numbers like this in cells, and you highlight over them, so that tells you if it's ready or not, or it tells you if it's ready or if you should enter things. But down here on the other side, if you put numbers in a cell, and you highlight them. Now remember what I'm doing. I'm left clicking and then dragging my cursor. Here's another status bar that tells you the sum and the count and the average of what you selected. So this is real useful because if you have a bunch of numbers in a column like this, you could highlight them, and then the status bar will tell you what's the sum of those, what's the count, and what's the average. Okay, so that's the status bar. Now, what are these buttons next to it? Well, these are just views that you can click on. And notice I clicked on that page break view, and this shows me what it looks like if I were to print it out. That's called a page break view. And you could move this page break. if you want. So I can move this if I want to here or here. But all it does, it says breaking up the pages. So you know, if you need to print this out, print this workbook out, you're going to have a bunch of pages, and you could move around where you want to break up the pages by using this button down here called page break preview, or page break view. This other button here is the page layout. So this sort of puts it puts you know, this a scale for the layout of the page. It has different scales on the top and different scales on the left. You don't use this very much, at least I don't, and I'm a heavy Excel user. You don't use this very much. You don't use the page break preview very much. Those are for only when you really want to print stuff off. What you're going to use probably 99.9% of the time is this normal view down here, which is what we're familiar with already. So let's see. I'm going to go back here and just click on this normal. Okay, so 99.999% of the time you are going to be in this normal view. And then one other thing is this zoom control over here. So what is this? Well, you can go like this and zoom out. And if I zoom out, notice what's happening. It's like you're moving away from the worksheet. So you're zooming out, and that allows you to see more columns. So I could see from A all the way over to AA over here. But if I zoom out more, now I could see all the way to AI. And if I keep zooming out, well, now you can't even see the letters on the columns because you've moved so far away from the worksheet. Same thing if you want to zoom in. You just scroll this over, and if I keep scrolling, now I'm really close to the worksheet, and that makes the cells really big. So you want to probably have this about 100%. So that's all that zoom stuff does. And then you'll see this scroll bar. It's just a scroll bar here that allows you to move from left to right, and this scroll bar here which allows you to move up and down. So if you have a bunch of data going down, you're going to use this scroll bar. Okay, so now let's talk briefly about the ribbon here. The first, I'm going to just go over these tabs real quickly. The first tab just basically shows you how to open files. If you want to open an Excel file, you could do that here. If you want to save a file or save this file as something, it also has a list of, you know, recent documents that you used. Notice here one of my recent documents was my workbook, which is the one I just opened. So it's going to have the one that the workbook that you are working on and any ones you just opened. You could create new templates and all kinds of stuff here, but 99% of the time you're just going to use this file tab to save stuff and open stuff and close stuff. When I say save, I mean you could save this workbook. I just saved it. If I clicked on that save, I just saved it. If I want to save it as something else, it pops up this dialog, and now I could save it as something else by putting in a different name. And then I would click save. I could do that here, my workbook 2, and I'll save it to my desktop, and I'll click save. So now I have my workbook 2 here. I just saved my workbook, which is right here, and I saved it as another workbook, my workbook 2. So now I have two workbooks. One here, which was the original one, and then I saved it as this, workbook 2. Okay, so the file tab is basically saving stuff and opening files, and you know, if you want to open a file, you just maneuver to it. Okay, so that's pretty much the file tab. The home tab is what you see a lot, and it's the most commonly used functions in Excel. So this is like bolding text, you could do that here. If I highlight these texts, remember, you left click and then drag your cursor to highlight stuff. If you highlight those cells and then click this B, then you have a bold functionality. So these are very commonly used commands. That's why it's called home. Why is it called home? Because this is where your home is. This is where 99% of the time you're going to be using these commands, like bolding stuff or whatever. The insert tab is exactly what it says it is. You could insert pictures and all kinds of stuff. And we'll go into this in detail in other videos. The page layout tab, exactly what it says. It helps you manage the layout of the page, like the margins and the orientation and things like that. The formulas tab has a ton of formulas. There's a ton of formulas in Excel, and this tab gives you access to all of them. The data tab allows you to do stuff with data, like sort the data and things like that, and filter the data, and we'll go over that in other videos. The review tab is saying, okay, now you have your data, do you want to review it, like check the spelling or do some look at the thesaurus. That's the gist of the review tab. The view tab allows you to zoom in or set the zoom like we just did. We could set the zoom down here, but you could also set the zoom here. And you could say, how do you want to zoom in? Do you want to zoom out or do you want to zoom in? And the developer tab is where you can actually, at the advanced Excel user level, you can write programs to automate things in Excel. So this is hopefully, if you're going to be using Excel on a daily basis, hopefully you'll get to this point where you can use this developer tab and do macros, because it's going to save you a bunch of time. And it's also very valuable to employers if you can automate things. And just a little heads up, on Excel, VBASQL.com, there's a library here called the Excel the Excel VBA library, and it has tons and tons of lessons, like 20 hours of video on just this developer tab. So if you're curious about what are the advanced features of Excel, this is it, the developer tab, and it could take you very far. Okay, but we're not there yet. We're going to focus on the simpler things. So what do you need to know about all these tabs? All you need to know is 99% of the time you're going to be on this tab, the Home tab. And you could do tons of great stuff just using the Home tab. Okay, so now one thing I want to show you is if right now the ribbon looks like it does, but when I resize my window, the ribbon sort of shifts, right? So if I make this Excel window very small, notice how the ribbon is shifting too. So if you encounter that, don't freak out. It's just resizing the ribbon and the commands on the ribbon as you resize your window. So that's all that's doing. Now let's talk for a second here about these buttons on what is on all these ribbons. Most of these ribbons, they have these things that when you scroll over them, they sort of highlight like orange. And you could see that happening here. And then they're like buttons because you could press them, right? And you could unpress them. But notice, let's see, if I press bold, it stays bold, right? And then I unpress it, and it stays orange if I press it. And if I press it again, it's not orange anymore. But notice these buttons over here, they're always orange. I can't press this and make it go away. That's because some buttons are like standalone buttons, where if you press it, you can unpress it, and it's not part of a group or anything. So like bold, if I highlight these cells and I click B for bold, it bolds those cells. And then if I highlight them again and click B, it unbolds the cells. But these controls over here, if I hover over it, it says align text. So these are sort of grouped. There's a grouping of 3 buttons, and you have to have one selected. So that's why I can't. That's why you'll see these things always highlighted orange or whatever. It's because some commands on these tabs are grouped together, and they have to have something selected. Because in this case, these buttons, they center your text. So if I highlight this and I click center, now the text here is centered, right? And if I click on this one and I want to center it, you'll see that it is orange here, so it's centered there. I guess I wanted to say with text, with cells that have text in them, it'll always be showing a selection. So you can't make this go away. If it has text in it or numbers like this, you're going to have to select one of these options. Either center it left like this, or center it center, or center it to the right, or align it. I'm sorry. So the big distinction here, though, is that this is a grouping of buttons that requires something to be selected, and this is not. I could just check that and unclick it, and it'll go away. Okay, so let's see. What we want to talk about next is a few of these commands here have actual menus, and you could see that when you click on something, more popping up of stuff is going on. But that's all that's going on here. Is a lot of the things on the ribbon, they're buttons, or they're a group of buttons, or they're a drop-down menu, and then they have options, and then you click on that, and that has a whole menu, and it might have other menus like this format. It has a whole bunch of options on a menu, and then it has other menus over here. So just be aware of that on all these tabs you're going to encounter things like that, and it's just saying, here's a menu. Or if it's not a menu, then it's just going to be a button. Okay, and if it's not a button, it might be a group of buttons. But that's all the tab is doing, is giving you functionality in a couple different ways, either with buttons or menus or multiple menus, or in this case, like a gallery that you can click on. So here's a bunch of charts. On the insert tab, if you go to column, you can insert a column chart, but it gives you a gallery of other charts. And then here's more options, more pop-ups of other charts. So there's tons of options, and that's why Excel, people think it's very complicated. It sort of is if you just don't see. It is organized. It's not disorganized. There's menus and then other menus, so don't freak out. You'll get there eventually. Okay, so we're done with talking about this ribbon. I mean, that's really the most painful part of being introduced to Excel, is what is this whole thing, and what are all these little drop-down menus and buttons and highlighted buttons. And so that was just an introduction to the tabs. In other videos, I'll post more things about these tabs for sure, and you'll be familiar with all of this stuff. But initially, I just wanted to show you that these are commands that are grouped in buttons, or they're a standalone button, or they have a menu, and all they do is allow you to do something. That's it. So don't freak out. Okay, so we covered pretty much the entire interface here. We covered a lot of stuff, but now you know what Excel is. You know that it's a place where you can put data, and imagine, this is kind of stupid data, just a bunch of random numbers there. You could do this. You could do year and sales. So this is like better, right? This is what people are normally used to seeing. I'm going to highlight these columns. I just put my cursor on the left click button and then cursor over to D and E. So I hold down the left mouse, left clicker, I'm not sure what to say, the left click of the mouse, and cursor over until you highlight another column, and then right click, and on this pop-up menu just go down here to delete and hit that. And now we cleared that out. So I just want to delete that to show you, here's what most people see in Excel, like this, right? Sales figures for a certain year or something. So that's data, right? So we know now how to enter that, right? You select a cell by left clicking on it. You can enter text, you can enter numbers, and as we saw before, if you go down here, you can enter a formula like this, equals, this cell plus this cell. You could do it like that. There's the formula. So that's Excel at its most basic level. We went over how to open it. You could click on it here, go to All Programs, then go to the Microsoft Excel folder or Microsoft Office folder and click on Microsoft Excel. We went over the interface, which was kind of a pain, but now you're familiar with everything you need to know about the interface. Except these things down here, which I'll get to right now. One thing we didn't go over is what are these things? So we know that this is a workbook, right? And what is a workbook? Well, it's composed of worksheets. I don't know if I said that, but yeah, I did say that. This is the worksheet. And by default, when you open up Microsoft Excel, you get 3 worksheets, and they're named Sheet 1, Sheet 2, and Sheet 3. And if you left click on them, you can go from one sheet to the next sheet. And that's all it is. It's a place you can store data over here, but then if you want to store more data, you can click on that sheet and you could put more data over here. And then if you want to store other data, you could make another sheet. If you want to add another sheet, you just click this little tab here, and it highlights says Insert Worksheet. So if I click that, there's Sheet 4. And if I click it again, there's Sheet 5, there's Sheet 6. If you want to delete stuff, you can right-click on it and just go Delete. And you'll delete a whole sheet. You can also rename it if you right-click and you rename it. So I'll name this sheet My Sheet. I could name this sheet something else. You cannot have worksheets that are named the same though. So I can't name this My Sheet. If I do, it pops up an error. It says you cannot rename this sheet. So that's an error. So I'm going to name this My Sheet, My First Sheet. So that's what these things are down here. They're worksheets where you could store other data. You can also color these sheets by right-clicking on the sheet and going to Tab Color. And then if I select yellow, now when I go to other sheets, I can see that this is my first sheet is yellow. Okay, so we covered everything about the interface here. The biggest part, like we said, was this ribbon. What does it do? Just remember, it's a bunch of commands. The 2 most important things are this file ribbon that allows you to open stuff and save stuff, and this home ribbon, which allows you to do a bunch of things that you commonly do. These other stuffs, they're definitely important, and we'll get to them. Then the formula bar, we saw how you could enter a formula, and here's the name box. We saw that there's a title up here on the top, and the minimize maximize for the Excel application, and this is the minimize maximize for this workbook, remember. So if I minimize that, then the workbook goes away, but up top it says Microsoft Excel. If I maximize it, there's my worksheet again in my workbook here. It says Microsoft, my workbook. We saw that there is a status bar down here that can say ready or enter or some other things. We also saw that there's this view area down here and this zoom area over here. And then we briefly went over these tabs up top. what do these do? Commonly used tasks. You could insert stuff like charts and shapes and all kinds of stuff, pictures, layout, formulas, data, and we'll go over those in other videos. So for right now, I hope that was a good introduction to Excel if you've never seen it before. I want to remind you to go to excelvbasequel.com where you can become an Excel expert. I really mean that. If you know nothing about Excel, there'll be videos on here that will take you from point A and take you all the way to the advanced level of Excel where you're actually programming and automating tasks. So you don't have to do the same thing every day and it takes an hour. You can write it in Excel, you can write a program in Excel and you could do it in a couple seconds. So in the next video, we'll keep going with the basics and we'll go over more about the worksheet and what can be done with that. So until the next video, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.